The acting head of ICE says the deadly shooting at a Dallas immigration center could have been worse. Todd Lyons says the sniper shot three people, killing one of them before turning the gun on himself. None of the victims were ICE employees. Lyons spoke exclusively with our Camila Montoya Galvez.
There was no way he could have known detainees were in that vehicle. He was just indiscriminately shooting, hoping to cause some carnage and mayhem, and it was at an ICE facility.
I want to bring in CBS News correspondent Omar Villafranca, who's been reporting from Dallas for us on this. Omar, any new details about possible motive and more information on the suspect?
Well, we know 29-year-old Joshua Johns. He has a house in Fairview, Texas, with his parents, and investigators were looking there. They were also looking at a home that was in Durant, Oklahoma. Now, something we want to mention as well, Kash Patel, the FBI director, put out a tweet basically talking about some unspent rounds that were found at the scene that had anti-ICE written on them. And DHS Secretary Kristi Noem actually basically said that when it comes to a motive, she thinks it's plainly obvious it's anti-ICE. So that is where they're leaning in that direction. But nothing official yet from investigators.
And Omar, let's talk about the victims. I mean, we don't know what the motive of this gunman was, but you know, the fact that he killed detainees is horrific. What do we know about them?
When it comes to the victims, Vlad, we don't know much. The Mexican consulate said one of the victims who was injured, not killed, was a Mexican citizen. We also learned that there were multiple people in that van, obviously, and they had been arrested. And they were actually detained, and that's why they were in that van. I talked to some immigration attorneys who were telling me that this is not one of those big detention facilities. This is a small building area. People check in here if they have their regular ICE check-ins that they have to do. If they're arrested as part of ICE operations, this is kind of a processing center where they'll come here and they'll go to several other areas that are much bigger.
All right, Omar Villafranca for us. Omar, thank you very much, my friend.
And now let's bring in CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camila Montoya Galvez. Camilo, good to see you today. You were the one to speak with the acting ICE director, Todd Lyons. So what were your takeaways from the conversation you had with him?
Well, Mugo, Director Lyons also told us that this shooting in Dallas could have been even deadlier had the shooter been more successful in targeting ICE officials and others who were in the vicinity of that ICE field office in that area. The director, of course, mentioned that one detainee has tragically died, 2 remain in critical condition, hospitalized in nearby hospitals. But he said that other people could have been hurt and harmed, Mugo, because he noted that this Dallas field office overseen by ICE sits near a major highway and that people were on their way to work and also to school at the time of the shooting early Wednesday morning. The director also told us that he is now reevaluating and re-examining security protocols for ICE operations and facilities across the country. But he also stressed to me, Mugo, that this shooting will not deter the Trump administration from pursuing that aggressive deportation campaign.
And Camilo, what do we know about the history of the suspect in this case?
Well, Acting Director Lyons did confirm the identity of the shooter. He identified the shooter as 29-year-old Joshua John of Texas, and he did note that the shooter has some type of criminal history, according to our team here at CBS News. He pleaded guilty to a narcotics charge back in 2016. That is really the extent of what we know about his criminal history. The director also told us that this man had a high-powered rifle when he really targeted this ICE field office in Dallas, and that he shot at this field office from a nearby rooftop and then obviously killed himself in the process. You know, the investigation remains ongoing, and the director referred to the FBI as to the shooter's actual motives, but he did believe that this was targeted at ICE specifically. Mugo.
All right. Camila Montoya Galvez, thank you so much for joining us today.
CBS News Homeland Security correspondent Nicole Skang following this. You've been following this now since it happened, live with us from Washington. So Nicole, this facility we know has seen threats before. So what's the response from Homeland Security?
Yeah, the Department of Homeland Security, Reed, has really publicly framed the shooting as a targeted, ideologically driven attack on law enforcement that was motivated by a hatred for ICE. And the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security has really urged politicians, people nationwide, to tone down their rhetoric about immigration enforcement officials. And both the FBI and DHS have released photos and say that shell casings recovered at the scene included anti-ICE messaging, pointing to that as evidence. Now, Director Lyons, in that great interview with our colleague, went on to say, when you have anti-ICE rhetoric written on the bullets, you know who they're targeting. DHS has also said it's taking immediate steps to increase security at ICE facilities, hardening some of those buildings. They haven't disclosed those details publicly, but it's worth mentioning, as you noted, that the same Dallas office had received earlier threats, including a bomb threat just last month.
Well, and it's also pretty chilling. You think of Luigi Mangione, a message on bullet casings. Tyler Robinson, prosecutors say, messages on bullet casings in this case as well. So what do we know about the history of the suspect in this Dallas case?
Yeah, Joshua John had a criminal record. In 2015, he was arrested in Texas for delivering marijuana. He pled guilty to a felony charge, and records show he's registered as an independent voter in Oklahoma, last voted in November of just last year. Now, so far, his family and interviews have suggested he didn't really have a strong political viewpoint. But just today, the FBI director indicated that the gunman had previously downloaded a document that actually listed DHS facilities in the Dallas area and had conducted multiple searches online of ballistics as well as video of Charlie Kirk being shot. Patel also said evidence to this point indicates a really high degree of pre-attack planning, and that one of the handwritten notes investigators recovered from the shooter had read something to the effect of, hopefully this will give ICE agents real terror. Investigators and officials I've spoken with have expressed concern that this attack was carried out also on the roof of a building, very similar to the tragedy that we saw play out in Utah just a few weeks ago. Of course, Reed, the worry now is about future copycat attacks.
Nicole Skanga, thank you so much for following that.